Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today is Tuesday, May 26, 2020, and today we're going to be talking about the election prediction of Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. I'm just going to be filling up these states here as we talk as we go. So today we're going to be talking about some polling today, except instead of just talking about polling, we're going to be talking about the margin of error with it, which I believe I'm not characterizing Georgia as a solid state, and I'll explain later today in this video. Alaska is not a Democratic state. And I believe there we go. Cool. So, as you may or may have not noticed, I haven't characterized Minnesota or Nevada as a solid state, which means I've either characterized it as a likely, lean, or toss-up. And we're going to be talking about that later today in this video. Actually, I'm going to talk about Nevada right now. Nevada, I'm going to characterize that as a likely Democratic state. The main reason is because Nevada is it is trending Democrat, though I wouldn't say or rely on it being a solid Democratic state. With its Latino voters, it does vote heavily Democrat by about 60% margin, and 30% Republican. However, on in Nevada, it could go either way. I could see Nevada going to a Republican, but depending on which Republican, I do not see it going to Donald Trump. When you look at his approval ratings and polling, it is not in the president's favor, which is why I'm also going to be characterizing Colorado as a Democratic state, as Colorado is not very much approved of with Donald Trump. And it has been leaning Democrat, and the state legislature even flipped. The state Senate flipped to the Democratic Party in 2018 in the midterm elections. West Virginia, I always keep forgetting West Virginia. It's a solid solid Republican state. Some odd reason. Georgia, I will be moving this from a solid to a likely Republican state. I could see this going to actually the Democratic Party in a few years, maybe 2024 or 2028. I would say there's a better chance of it going to 2028 than 2024, but the main reason is more African American demographics change in Georgia, and it's helping increase the democratic trend in Georgia. Though I wouldn't say it's going to be I wouldn't say it's trending Democrat. I would say it is tilting a little bit more Democrat than usual, with more demographics shifting in Georgia. Texas, I'm going to characterize this from, instead of a lean like last video, I'm going to characterize that as a likely. My reason behind this is because of Texas is I don't see Texas flipping to the Democratic Party. The main reason behind this is because Texas, it's been voting pretty solid ever since Bush, and in 2000, 2004, it's been voting pretty solidly Republican throughout those years. And I don't, though Trump isn't greatly approved of in Texas, and I wouldn't say it's the best approval rating, I don't see Texas flipping. I do think the GOP can rely on Texas, and I don't really even think that they even need to focus on that yet. I think in 2024 they should for sure look at it, but if they're looking at it at 2020, that would probably be a waste of time. Moving on to Arizona. Arizona, when looking at polling, Arizona's polling has been pretty accurate. I'm not even gonna lie. Romney was polled on winning the state. He won 2008. McCain polled on winning the state. He did. The only problem of me relying on polling is MOE, which stands for margin of error, 4%. And this is a likely voters sample, registered voters, registered. But this was accurate. If it was in favor of Joe Biden, it would be a 54-39, an expanded lead for Biden on the poll. But if it wasn't, this would be 47-46. And that would have given Trump a plus 1%. And I think many people, especially many YouTubers, disregard this number right here when talking about election predictions. And I just, to me, in my video, I don't want to do that. And I think I should tell you guys that. And not trying to be mean or anything, but I think all election prediction YouTubers are awesome. And they do great, no doubt, on their elections. And I support them 100%, but I just think that they should focus more not just on polling, but also on the margin of error as well. For example, on this poll, if this was 46-47, actually Trump would have won that poll if it was in favor of Trump, though it would have given Biden an expanded lead. If it was in favor of him, it would actually have given Trump the lead. I really do think that people need to focus more and more on the margin of error. However, on Arizona, polling has actually been pretty accurate. Even for in the 2018 Senate election, polling was actually going to Kristen Sinema. Where is that? Yep. The predictions was a toss-up on the Cook Political Report Inside Elections, Tilt Democrat, Sabato's Crystal Ball, Lean Democrat, CNN toss-up, Real Killer Politics toss-up, 538 toss-up, toss-up. And when you look at the campaign finance report, Kristen Sinema outbeat Martha McSally, which was actually a very shocking experience for me. I honestly thought that Martha McSally could have won this state, but Kristen Sinema outperformed the Democrats on this state. Let's see, who is she endorsed by? Barack Obama, Joe Biden. Yeah. I think Arizona is moving more and more into a Democratic state. This county was not Republican. Was not Democrat before. It was actually Republican. Yeah, I was right. Yeah. She outperformed and even got a 64.85% turnout. I don't know if 52.9% turnout in 2012. 64.85% turnout in 2018. I mean, it really just shows that the demographics in Arizona is also changing shift political party-wise, and it looks like it's leaning more and more to the Democrat in 2020 election, which is also why I am putting this as a tilt. I am not putting this as a likely. I don't think I'm ever going to put Arizona as a likely. The main reason why is because it has been a solid GOP state for Republicans to rely on for years, ever since 1992, when President Bill Clinton was president. It has been that solidly red. And the fact that it's now trending now towards the Democratic Party is amazing and shocking. And it really interests me more on how Arizona is doing. And honestly, this moves me right into Minnesota. Minnesota. What to say about Minnesota? Minnesota. If I could just go to the polling on Minnesota. Here we are. There we go. Here we are. This is the Minnesota 2020 poll. This was conducted at May 18th through May 20th. 800 registered voters. 3.5 margin of error. Biden with 49 and 44. If this was in favor of Biden, it would be 52.5%, and Trump with 40.5%, which would be an enormous lead. However, if it favored Donald Trump, it would be 47.5 for Donald Trump and 45.5 for Joe Biden. And if you did 47.5, that would be a 2-point lead for Donald Trump in Minnesota. And that is amazing, actually, when you look at how close that poll was conducted. I mean, it was like 50-38, like almost like no chance Trump was going to get. And then next thing you know, bam, 49-44, like, oh, snap. And honestly, although this is a tough polling, I'm still going to characterize Minnesota as a solid state. The main reason why is because I'm a little iffy on this polling, and I think they're missing. I think people that are polling are actually polling this completely wrong. And by that I mean they're moreover going to the more older generation, and not just thinking about like other generations as well and other people, because not everyone has a cell phone or a phone line. So when you're taking this into account on polling, you can't just completely rely on this on polling, because there are voters that do not have cell phones or do not even have a telegraph or anything. I mean, why did I say telegraph? Electronics with them to communicate with them. That's all. That's my main reason why I'm gonna keep it as a solid Democratic state. Now, keep in mind, it did go to Clinton 1.5, and it was a competitive state in 2016, no doubt, absolutely. But Joe Biden is the vice president of Barack Obama, and Obama won this state by 10.3% in 2008 and 7.7% in 2012. And I mean, when you look at polling, I mean, at Survey USA, it had McCain at 46 and Obama at 49, and he outperformed that. And not to mention, on 2012, it had Obama at 5.2. He won it by even a bigger margin at 7.7. So, I mean, and they even had like Romney leading on polling. So I'm not going to rely on polling as much as many other people do. And I'm going to consider Minnesota as a solid Democratic state. I really do think that the Democratic Party will carry the state. If I am wrong, you can look at me on this video and be like, well, you're wrong. But, moving on to Iowa. Iowa has actually been going to Donald Trump in regards to polling, and I actually agree with Iowa going to the Republican Party, at least on presidential level. I'm gonna have to go right here. Here we are. Yeah, Iowa has been going to Biden by a 4.6% average margin. It had Trump at 2%, Trump at 10%, Trump at 2%. Now, looking at the margin of error, if this was in favor of Biden, we'd have 46 plus 2.8, which would be 48.8, and 48 subtracted by 2.8, which in that case would be 45.2%, which in that margin would actually give Biden a win on this poll. Actually, if this poll was either, actually, Trump would have still won that poll. What was this? 3.8%. But I honestly, I don't see Biden winning this state. He could win this state, but I see Iowa heavily favoring Trump. When you look at 2016, it had Trump at 3.0% average, and he won by 9.5%. He outperformed the RCP average on polling, and that's why I wouldn't. I'm not very. I don't want to underestimate candidates because either candidate, Trump or Biden, can win this state, no doubt. But I see Iowa heavily favoring Trump, even though the tariffs may have hurt the farmers in Iowa, and we may have went through a well, some people may say a recession, or I I still see Iowa going to not as a solid state, but as a likely state to the GOP. Um, Mostly because Trump is very well liked in Iowa. Although Barack Obama did win this twice in 2008, 2012, because honestly, I am very split on who will win the election. It could go to Trump or it could go to Biden. I do not know. I will never 100% know. My election predictions will never be fully accurate. I don't think anyone's ever will be, to tell you the truth. But I do think Iowa will go to the Republican state. To Donald Trump. Uh, mainly because of his approval rating. He is well liked in Iowa, and I do think people really do approve of him. Okay, so moving on out of that state, we're going to Virginia. Virginia, I'm characterizing this as a likely. Uh, Virginia actually had a GOP state legislature and a Democratic governor and Democratic lieutenant governor. In 2018, it flipped the state legislature to a Democratic House and Democratic Senate. It used to go to it went to George W. Bush in 2000. I can't remember about 2008. 2004. I'd have to look at that one. But what I do know is that Virginia is trending more and more Democratic. And the fact that Hillary won that state in 2016, let me look at Virginia. She won it by 5.4%, and Obama won that state by 3.9% in 2012, and that grew. That's actually pretty shocking, and she even outperformed by 0.4% on final results, which just proves how more Democratic it is trending than it used to. It flipped in 2008, I know that for sure. 2008, that was a huge upset election from George W. Bush. I believe the 2008 election was mainly because of the recession, and people were not very happy about that. And needless to say, that didn't go too well. But moving on with that, I'm going to characterize New Hampshire as a likely Democratic state, presidential level. It's been turning more and more Democratic. It has been. It used to be a toss-up state few years back, but it's turning more and more Democrat. With going to Al Gore and John Kerry and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, I believe it is going to go to Joe Biden. And moving on with that, North Carolina. Look at polling. Trump won that state by 3.7%, had him at average at 1.0%. If we go to the 2020 electoral map, yeah, Trump is leading by 1.0%. Now, if this margin of error was right, Biden would be leading, because we'd have 43 plus 3.4, that would be 46.4, and 46 subtracted by 3.4, 42.6. I think North Carolina will go to Donald Trump. I can see it going to Biden. Depending on it all depends. I mean, we still have about over 100 days before the November election. It can go either or. North Carolina, it went to Obama by less than 0.3% and Romney at 2%, and Trump was 3.7%. And I mean, if it's trending the way it is, I do think, because with the average at 1.0% and he outperformed that by 2.7%, I can see Donald Trump actually with a likely scenario for the GOP on winning this state. Mainly because North Carolina, although it voted for Roy Cooper as its governor in 2016, which I found it very weird how it went to Donald Trump by a good margin on North Carolina in 2016, but then went to Roy Cooper. But I can see it going to Joe Biden, but I honestly think overall, with its voting history, I think North Carolina is going to go to lean Democrat. Getting messed up. To likely Republican state. Moving on to Florida. Florida is going to be a pure toss-up. I do not see it going to likely to any candidate. But when we look at the Florida polls, yeah. So surprisingly, Biden is winning the average of 3.3%. And Obama won twice by 2.8 to 0.9% in 2008 and 2012. Trump won that by 1.2, and he only led the average by 0.2%, so we outperformed that. I think if this is accurate, and if the margin of error was in favor of Biden, Biden would carry Florida. But if it wasn't, I would say, honestly, and I think that this is accurate, it is a complete toss-up. I think many people can agree with me on that. I could see it going to either Biden or Trump. It's going to be a very hard prediction for me to make on this one. With this poll being a tie, could go. This margin of error could have given either Biden an advantage or Trump an advantage. Moving on with the electoral map, I'm actually characterizing Florida as a tilt Democratic state. My main reason behind this is, well, Biden is not like Hillary Clinton. Sure, many people may think that way, that Biden is similar to Hillary Clinton in 2016, but Biden is actually very different. And in many cases, actually, he's even more progressive. And that's just in political stances. Um, I looking at not only just polling but on approval ratings, Trump is. I wouldn't say he has the best approval rating. I think it had him at a +1 advantage on his approval ratings. Um, which is why I'm going to be doing a video about that and talk about that soon. But I think Florida will be a likely, I'm at a tilt Democratic state now. I'm moving it to a tilt Democratic state for Joe Biden, mostly because I view this as a pure toss-up. I can see this going to either Biden or Trump, and I honestly can see Joe Biden getting Florida. Um, However, Florida is a conservative state. I'm not even gonna lie, but with the additional 1 million voters that have been added to the voting records, I think this is which has predominantly been African American, and African Americans tend to by 90% actually vote Democrat. I honestly do think with that additional 1 million voters, it could edge out Joe Biden to getting at least a slight advantage on getting Florida now. I didn't have that on my last video, but I have it now as a tilt Democratic state. Moving on to Maine. Maine, Alabama, 2nd district. I'm leaving that as a likely district. I'm also putting this as a likely. Maine 2nd district. Many people have characterized this as a likely Republican state. I'm actually moving this from my previous prediction. Instead of a likely, I'm moving this as a tilt district now. Mostly because Maine, it went to Obama twice. And hold on, let me get the Maine results. Maine is heavily favoring Joe Biden at 52-42, 54-44. And Obama won this by 15.3. He won this at 17.3 at 2008 and 15.3 at 2012, and Clinton won by 2.9. Now, it is without a doubt that Joe Biden is going to win majority of the district, but I feel like with well, sorry about that. I feel with Joe Biden, he is more of a stronger candidate, and I feel like the 2nd district will probably be more lenient in voting for him, mostly because he's not a he was born in Pennsylvania, and I think that actually could have a positive impact in Maine voters, and so that's where I'll leave it as for that. Going into Ohio. Ohio did go to Trump at 8.1% and Obama at 3.0% and 4.6% at 2008. Had him at 3.5% average, and he outperformed by 8.1% overall. I honestly think that Biden can win the state of Ohio. Sure, it heavily voted for him. Heavily voted for Donald Trump in 2016, but you have to take it into account that 2016 was more of a it was more of a I had 8 years of a Democratic president. Now I want 4 to 8 years of a Republican administration. And now that they're seeing Trump's administration, I don't think they've realized clearly what's been going on. Um, I I think Ohio is now getting more of a glimpse at what Trump is actually doing now, and making it more and more of a competitive state. Though I do think it can go to Biden, I still think, um, being non-biased here, I still think it'll go to Trump by a likely margin. I'm moving it from a leaning to a likely margin, or I believe I did pronounce it as a likely margin in my last video. Um, Whether or not if I did, you can check on my last video, but I'm gonna keep it as a likely margin mostly because I think Ohio is moreover a Republican state than a Democratic state. The reason why I voted for Obama was mostly because of the African American vote, which I think is key to the Democrats in winning in 2020 if they want to win in 2020. And I also think that if I honestly think that's going to help Joe Biden win um, the overall election, as I've already given him 273 electoral votes because of the heavy African American turnout that may or may not come in 2020. I do not know for sure if it will. It may and it may not. I could be 100% wrong about that, but I do think that Joe Biden will actually have a stronger chance on getting the African American vote than Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton got 59% of African American turnout. Barack Obama in 2012 had 66% and 2008 65%. So he did better in 2012 than he did in 2008, which honestly is pretty outstanding. But I think with Joe Biden being Barack Obama's vice president for 8 years, I think that actually will help him on the African Americans more um, than Hillary Clinton. And so that's why I'm also going to be characterizing Ohio as a likely, not solid, mostly because of the large base of African Americans. However, you have to take this into account. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Solid Democratic state. Why? Well, heavy African American turnout. However, more and more of demographics are shifting, and more people are moving to the South. When coming to African Americans, they're moving more and more to states like Texas, which is trending Democrat, to states like Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, um, which is why it's becoming more and more competitive in my view, and it's also why I think, if anything, it'll be a pure toss-up in 2024, depending on who that candidate may be. Um, if Joe Biden wins or if Donald Trump gets reelected, it all depends on who is the Republican and the Democratic nominee and how they will perform uh, on these states and if they will like them or not. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are going to be close. I do not see them going to the most solid states. And on Michigan, I'm honestly going to predict this as a likely again, as I did on my recent video, mostly because of Michigan is heavily approving of their governor on the coronavirus pandemic. I believe a 60% approval rating, which is outstanding. And not only that, but Michigan is not very much in favor of Donald Trump, and they do not fully support of what President Donald Trump is doing. Moving on to Wisconsin, I honestly think that Wisconsin is going to still be a tilt Democrat. It has not changed whatsoever, in my view. I think that Joe Biden will honestly win Wisconsin, and like I said on my recent video, I really think that people are going to look at that and determine their votes by that. Um, but I mean, I could be wrong. Wisconsin, I still think Wisconsin's going to be the closest. The second closest, I think, will be Arizona. But honestly, this could go to either or. It could go to Donald Trump or it could go to Joe Biden. It all depends on how people turn out. Um, but I honestly think, let's see here. Wisconsin, it has Trump on 2.7. 2016, it had Clinton at 6.5. So I honestly thought had the Wisconsin State Supreme Court not have made the decision to overturn uh, the decision on postponing the primary, I honestly think that Donald Trump would have 100% had a chance of flipping the state, keeping it to its Republican identity from 2016 into 2020. But I'm just going to keep that Wisconsin at 10 electoral votes. Now moving on to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, let's look at polling. Pennsylvania has by 6.5% average. Trump had Clinton with 1.9 and Trump overperformed with 0.7%. I honestly think Pennsylvania will go tilt Democrat. Yeah, sure, the polling was wrong in 2016, though I do think that there's going to be a lot more turnout in both the Democrat and Republican column, and I honestly think that a lot of voters in Pennsylvania do like Joe Biden, honestly, mainly because he was born there and he has a very well appeal to Pennsylvania than Hillary Clinton did. And it's gonna be, I honestly think it's gonna be a very close election. I do not think it will be a solid margin. I think it will be a slim margin, and that's why I'm gonna put Pennsylvania in the tilt Democratic column. Nebraska's second district. That is going to be a very interesting election. I honestly do think, though, even though I honestly still think it's going to go to Donald Trump by a tilt margin. Mostly because of Nebraska's second district was actually close in 2016. I was 100% wrong on the 2018 congressional elections. Nebraska's incumbent representative district second, he won that by 51%. That was my bad, but I do think that Donald Trump will win the Nebraska second district with this one electoral vote. And with that being said, that is my time. We have Joe Biden at 319 electoral votes, being effective the 46th president of the United States, and Donald Trump at 219. And yeah, this is my video. And subscribe, comment. Comment down if you want more of these or less of these. If you don't want more of these, that's cool. I can just set aside and do more of my presentations that I usually do. And yeah, cool.